Welcome to our podcast, Off the Rails, Chasing Faith in a Post-Christian Culture. I am one of your hosts, Kate Mackey.
And I am Kellie Whitlock. We are well aware that the Church Universal has a history of disservice to the true message of Jesus Christ. And this is why we have created this podcast. It is our hope that through our conversations, our listeners will gain a better understanding of who Jesus truly is and his deep and abiding love for us all.
Both of us are members of Generation X and have grown up in the church. Kellie has over 30 years of professional parish ministry experience, holds both a Master's of Divinity degree as well as a Master's in Clinical Psychology.
Kate has a Master's of Science in Sports Management from another life, as well as a Doctor of Ministry. And as part of our calling, we love serving our local first responders as chaplains. I serve the police department, and Kate serves the fire department.
Though we are both pastors, chaplains, and members of Gen X, our lives couldn't be more different. Kellie is married with 4 adult children, 1 being special needs, and 3 grandchildren.
Well, Kate is single, never had children, and in comparison, lives just this carefree lifestyle. Yet our shared love for Jesus, the local church, and generations younger than ours, not to mention a deep and abiding love for Elvis Presley, has created a unique bond as ministry partners and friends that transcends our very different life situations.
Through stories, scripture, hopefully a little humor, and some practical application, we hope our listeners will fall in love with Jesus and his message in the same way we have. We are so glad that you have joined us on this journey as we chase faith together in this ever-changing, ever-uncertain post-Christian age.
Welcome to Off the Rails.
Hello. How's everyone doing today? How you doing over there, Kellie?
I am great.
Good. I am so glad. Welcome back to Off the Rails podcast. We welcome you to this is our 10th episode.
Wow.
Who would have ever thunk
We're
it?
like official now.
Kinda. There's some random stat out there that says that like 90-some% podcasts fail before the 10, or if they don't get out at least 10 episodes.
Really?
They just kind of, I don't know what, evaporate into the atmosphere or something.
Oh my gosh.
Not sure. So this is actually kind of a big milestone for us in the world of podcasting.
Well, I should have known. I could have brought What Great Things Happen in Tens, to celebrate.
Oh, that would have been cool. Mm-hmm. Cake would have been fine.
Yeah.
No cake?
Or the 10 Commandments. We could have gone over those while eating cake.
Because that wouldn't make our listeners want to turn off and try something else.
Right. Unless we showed Monty Python.
Fast.
15 Commandments. 10.
Oh, boy. That would have worked.
Happy 10th anniversary
Yes.
of our podcast, Kate.
10th episode anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
cool.
thank you all for listening.
Oh, exactly.
My
Yeah.
goodness. Thanks
Yes.
to everyone.
We are appreciative of the support that we have received so far. And I think as of today, which is the day that we're recording, not the day that it's released, we're in 2 other countries besides the United States, which is pretty cool. And
Wow.
18 states. So I don't know.
Nice.
So wherever you are and whoever's listening, we appreciate you. And especially if you're someone that we don't know, we would love to get to know you. Send us a message or a post or something. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and where you're coming from. But we appreciate all the support that we're getting from
Absolutely.
family and friends and all you random folk out there. So
Because
thanks.
we're all friends.
That's right. All right. So as all of our episodes begin, we do what we call confessions from behind the table. So I don't think we've prefaced this in a little while, Kel, but we kind of came up with that idea because we both serve together in a church as pastors. And every Sunday we sit behind the communion table and get to look out over our beautiful congregants, and we just a different bird's eye view of stuff. But we also thought it would be kind of funny to share some random stories in our lives as pastors, and to give you a glimpse into things that we see or do or have said that may not be the most
Holy.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. I was not going to say the word holy, but I see where your mind is headed today, but not the brightest moments, the best moments in our careers. But and the one I'm going to share today is definitely not one of the best moments that I have ever had in my life. And
it's going to be good.
It is really. I think it's funny, but it's also. Yeah, not okay. So let me just share.
Oh, this is confession.
Yes. So we've got a lady in our congregation, older lady, and it was Sunday morning, and we have mailboxes for all of our members that sit outside the main office. And I would say, I don't know I'm not good at judging feet, but it's a fair little distance between where the mailboxes sit and the sanctuary. What? 300 feet?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe less.
Terrible at that sort of thing. So anyway, I see her standing at the mailboxes and she's looking just really lost and confused and she's scanning the boxes. I was like, hey, how you doing all right this morning? And she's like, well, I can't really see. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's not good. You want me to help you find, are you looking for I'm looking for my mail, but that's not really that important. I can't see. I was like, yeah, that's not good. So should we call somebody for you? Or no, that's okay. Just, if you could just take me into the sanctuary, I'd be really grateful. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I put her on my arm and I'm walking nice and slow with her and we're heading towards the sanctuary. And before you get to the narthex of our sanctuary, and the narthex it's a fancy word for like lobby, basically. We have double doors, which always are propped open on a Sunday for the traffic coming through that, and it's a pretty big traffic area. And I'm got this lady on my arm, and I'm going through those open double doors, and figuring I'm going nice and slow, and I'm guiding her just fine. But I guess I really didn't understand the depths of how well she couldn't see at this moment. And, most double doors, there's a pole between the doors, right? And I'm going through the doorway. And of course, this lady on my arm is kind of right in the middle of these double doors, which is where the pole is. So I walked her right into this pole.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, oh my God, I felt horrible. And I was like, I cannot believe I just walked her straight into a pole, thinking I'm doing the right thing and helping her out. And oh my goodness gracious. And I think she got like a
what?
Not a full-on concussion. What's the other?
Oh my gosh.
A slight concussion out of it or something.
Did the paramedics come?
Well, no, the paramedics did. That would have been
your own paramedics. Did they come?
No, my guys did not show up.
That would have been great.
But she did. I mean, that didn't help her situation.
Oh my!
That she was already having this medical thing, which I can't remember what they found out it was after. I think it was like maybe a mini stroke that she had.
Oh my gosh!
Anyway, got her into the sanctuary and got her seated, and then other people in her world came around her, and they're like, "Yeah, no, we're taking you to the hospital." But in the interim, I ran this poor, sweet little old lady right into a pole, trying to get her to her seat. So, so that's
it
my.
Looks so
that's
good,
my
right?
confession.
Here's the pastor,
exactly.
An elderly woman on your arm,
yes.
and whomp. Right?
It was a whomp.
Oh my
I was
gosh!
Just. Yeah. Anyway.
And then did we pray for her in worship? Did you go directly to the hospital following worship? The good thing is she's got a great sense of humor.
She
and
does
she
have
will
a good
never
sense of
let
humor.
You forget that
I know.
story.
No,
so that's good.
No. So anyway, so there you have it. There's my confession
oh my
from behind the table.
Forgot how
for
funny
this.
That was. Sorry, I'll get my act together.
Funny at the expense of Anyway, and this was just like last year or 2 years ago. I mean, this was really recent.
Yeah. So. Do not walk arm in arm with Kate.
No,
That's
do
the
not. You do
story.
not. Correct. Clearly, I am not a good guide. So, does Jesus say in one of the scriptures? Woe to you, blind guides. Was that me in that moment? I was
I
a
think
blind
so.
guide and experiencing my own woe. Like, oh, goodness gracious. Anyway, okay, so here we are, episode 10, and we don't really have a fancy title for this, but we're talking about the idea of trust. And this episode came about from, by the grace of God, being able to listen to other people that are way smarter than us and people that have incredible insight, listening to another podcast, and just started wrestling with this idea and learning from this other podcast. It was actually Carrie Newhoff's leadership podcast, and he was interviewing another pastor, a gentleman by the name of Glenn Packiam, and Glenn was kind of sharing the fact that we live in an age of incredibly spiritually curious people, yet we are also living in a culture where people are incredibly mistrustful of institutions. And there's a long list of these institutions that they're not trustful. So trustworthy,
Trusting.
trusting that they are trusting in.
Right.
Yes. So Kellie and I started kind of wrestling with this idea. What does it mean for us as pastors, and hopefully people who are spiritual guides and not, running you into a pole in your spiritual life. So what is it that we need to share with you all, especially those of you who are spiritually curious and trying to figure out the whole faith thing and where your spirituality lies? What is it that we have to share with you in that regard? So it really is fascinating. Again, something else that's interesting about this time and this space that we live in. So
Yes, I think it's also interesting too, because now we have social media, so you can join in on any church service and hear any preacher that you like, but you don't necessarily have to be a part of the church or the institution, like the Christian church.
Yes.
So you can follow a preacher or a teacher, a spiritual guide.
yes.
And so it's an interesting day and age. Before we had the ability to live stream, that just was not happening.
Right.
You had to go into a building
Exactly.
to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. So what we're dealing with is, and you as our listeners may fall into some of these categories, but there are, according to our good friends over at the Barna Research Company, they say that 71% of people do believe in some sort of supernatural thing in the universe, some sort of ethereal energy, God, whatever,
Universe, can be
universe, yes. And so that's a good thing. That's a good thing for us in our line of work, because we get paid to believe in Jesus, which is kind of cool in a way. So, and we're also in a place where we feel like we're never perfectly there spiritually, but
Always seeking.
we're always seeking. But I'll speak for myself, Kellie. Jesus is it for me, and there's nothing that's gonna change my thinking on that. So
I think it's astounding that, we believe in Jesus so much, we want to follow Jesus, and we actually earn a paycheck for that.
I know.
Like I would be doing that anyway, and so would you.
Right.
And
right.
But thank goodness my family thanks our church for that.
Yes. So does my mortgage company and my car.
Yeah. And then too, like everybody else, we're out there working and tithing and doing all that good stuff. So, but yes, it is hopeful that 71% of people believe in something bigger than themselves. Maybe is that.
Yeah, correct.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, so that's basically what we're dealing with as far as the demographics of people in the United States go. But when we look at all the different places where there is a higher level of mistrust than we've seen any other time in our culture, there's interestingly, and some of these things I found really interesting. So there's a mistrust in science. So there's been a decline in the trust in science, and apparently digging into it a little bit deeper, it was kind of all situated around the the pandemic, the news and unfortunately, I think science became a victim of the news and information sources, which is, of course, another segment of our community, of our culture, where trust is declining in news sources and that sort of thing. So with the whole, to vaccinate to not vaccinate, what is really happening with the pandemic, how bad is COVID-19 really? So I think a lot of that has fed into the decline in trust of science. Another area is the decline in trust of education, and especially, I guess, more so towards higher education. So colleges and universities, and because they kind of follow similarly interesting patterns like our like government and politics. You've got some universities that go towards the conservative side of things, and some towards the liberal, and some people are starting to say, well, you got professors that can teach whatever they want, especially if they've got tenure, and so we're mistrusting that they're actually teaching fact and not simply their opinions. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is. It also means they're not trusting who is above, these teachers.
Yes.
So now it's a really systems issue.
Yes. Lack of accountability for sure. Another area, there's a decline in trust of the Supreme Court, which thought that was interesting. And of course, we already touched on the news and information sources, but a lot of these things, again, I think I just touched on it. It is very much politically driven. Especially science. And we saw a lot of divisiveness between Republicans and Democrats when it came to the whole vaccination thing and what was going on there. Of course, the Supreme Court, I think, thankfully, I don't know exactly where they are, but they're pretty divided, which is good, because we want people sitting on the bench that are of both conservative and liberal voices. So that is not necessarily a bad thing. But anyway, that's the area that we're living in. We're living in this time and space with people that are really curious about spiritual things, but also mistrusting of institutions. And this is where, again, you and I find ourselves, Kellie, is that, well, we're pastors, and we're kind of beholden to an institution in a way. We're sort of beholden to a denomination. But ultimately, Jesus is going to be our final say. I'd like to think if it came down to it, I would always follow Jesus, even if it cost me my job, if I didn't agree with something denominationally, where the powers that be in our denomination could say, oh, you're out. But anyway.
Well, and so we're Presbyterian, so our denomination says that we have the ability to weigh Scripture with creeds and confessions, and to come to our own, based on those things, to come to our own decision. But we also are a part of a denomination that will stand and take a stance on a variety of issues in the world. So so I love that. I don't want to be a part of a denomination that doesn't stand for anything. But I also don't want to feel like, if I may feel differently about a particular issue, that I'm going to be ostracized or kicked out or thrown out the door. So, and that's also interesting. So right there, you're weighing, what does an institution believe and say? What are the beliefs and creeds of whatever you're looking at, from science to church? And then what about individuals inside of those institutions? And are they bold enough and brave enough to say, hey, how about we reconsider that? Or how about we look at that again?
Right.
And those people tend to really inspire us.
Yes. And that's what they have said throughout all this research, even though the article that I read through Pew Research about all the mistrust in various institutions is that they did bring in the hope at the end of the article, and saying the hopeful thing is, I think, I don't want to misquote, but I want to say it was like 8 out of 10 people feel like individually they can make changes. They can make that they are powerful enough to make changes through just being kind, and through their voice in the voting booth, and that sort of thing. So that is pretty cool, that there is still a level of hope that we can increase our trust in these various institutions. And of course, as we've mentioned this many times, and I think we've even dedicated a whole episode to it about the mistrust, of course, in the church, and that's led to a lot of difficulties for us, as pastors. And the interesting thing is that we are now starting to see even a mistrust in individual pastors too. There was a crazy statistic again by Glenn Packiam where he said that in 2022, only 65% of Christians would agree that a pastor is a trustworthy voice of wisdom. That's like 1/3 of Christians. That's pretty high number. 1/3 of Christians don't believe pastors to be a voice of wisdom. The worst part is it's declined 20% since 2022. So now only 45% of church-going Christians believe that a pastor is a trustworthy source of wisdom. And these are Christians that have been polled, not atheists or agnostics or folks from other belief systems. This is Christians who only 45% of Christians think that we're trustworthy. What do you say to that, Kellie?
Well, that is interesting because it's based on the year 2022, right? So we had just come out of COVID. So, and now since then, we've had a lot of political divisiveness. We've had fake truth and real truth. And I mean, there's been all of these things. So also, I think we all have a tendency, if we hear about one person that we really have a lot of faith in, we like them, we follow them, and then we find out they did something. I mean, and I think that's especially in the case of religious leaders, of pastors, spiritual leaders. And we think, oh my gosh, we thought, they were held to a higher standard, and we can't believe that they would do fill in the blank.
Right.
And then, therefore, we take that one person and we just lump the whole institution that they're from and go, well okay, then it's kind of like, as a police chaplain, I know one, someone says, I know one bad cop, so therefore I don't like any cops.
Correct.
Same thing. And just name it. Scientists, doctors, that kind of thing. And that's really unfair.
It is. It is unfair. But, at the same time, the person in the wrong should be held accountable, for sure.
Most certainly.
For sure.
Because if they weren't, then you'd never believe in those institutions.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
There's no accountability.
Right. But, not unfortunately, but unfortunately, we serve in a institution, in a religion, in a belief system that has a belief in higher morality. And so when someone, of course, we've said this many times, we're human and we're going to make mistakes. Absolutely. But I also struggle. I mean, I make mistakes every single day.
Right.
But I don't believe I have great moral failures. And that's part of the issue with the mistrust of the church, especially with 13 to 25-year-olds, as they see moral failure, which I get. And we're supposed to still forgive these people for their moral failures. But at the same time, it's like, buddy,
right.
This was a big moral failure on your part. And so that's kind of the rub, right?
So I would say if I know somebody, let's just say, so I have a relationship with a pastor, and I am a pastor, and then I find out, the truth comes out that this pastor, let's say, cheated on their spouse, and did so for a long time, and then it became known, and sometimes even the pastor might acknowledge that and say, I've been cheating on my wife, I've fallen short, blah, blah, blah. And they hold themselves accountable, aside from being, there's a protocol for that. So they would probably be removed from their position. They'd have to go to counseling. There's an accountability piece. But I think we don't always get the story of what it means to confess and do it in the public eye and have to come back and do the work and come back and be like, hey, I'm the biggest sinner out there. Now
Right.
I'm a vulnerable person. And boy, now I'm really effective in ministry because I know what it's like to fall short.
Right.
And I know what it's like to really need the grace of God in a way that someone maybe who doesn't, commit a public moral failure doesn't experience.
That's true.
And I would say I am drawn to that kind of person because I think it's
Right.
really rare. I think it's
Yes.
rare to have someone who's willing to, like, especially in the public eye, whatever, even on the, like our little, our local church.
Right.
And to say, oh my gosh, this happened to me and I admit it. And it's destroyed relationships. I need to accept accountability for this, whatever that means. And now I'm going to work on getting myself back on track. And probably they wouldn't go back to that church. They'd have to figure out where they go next. But
Right.
I mean, oh my goodness. It's kind of like those who work in prison ministries who were once in prison.
Yes,
Know better,
correct.
pastors and
Correct.
counselors kind of thing. So what does that mean? So maybe I see somebody who I really admire and I find out, oh man, but then I find
Right.
out a year or two later, man, look what they've done. And it's out in the open and now they're doing this
They're
kind
being
of
honest.
ministry. Right.
They're being honest.
Yes,
And
right.
part of the issue is people
Honesty.
that aren't honest. And I think a lot of part of the problems with the greater institution is how the greater institution reacts. So I was telling you earlier, Kellie, about an organization that was highly influential in Christian training and especially like in youth ministry and pastoral leadership and that sort of thing. So by the way, we are well aware that sexual misconduct it's not exclusive to the Catholic Church by any means. We have had, on the Protestant side of things, some very well-known pastors that have made really awful decisions and have gotten caught. So recently there was a bigger name, a pretty big name in the world of ministerial leadership and youth ministry. And he had been a sexual predator for a very long time and got caught, got called out for it. And the big issue came with the way that the institution that he worked for handled it, where they made a public statement that just was not great at all for the victims. It downplayed the victims and what they had gone through. And that's the problem. That's the problem where they took his moral failure and downplayed it. And that's again where I think we're having a lot of issues with the mistrust, with moral failure. It's if you got the one person that's out there like, I screwed up, I'm wrong, this is not okay. The voices of the victims need to be heard. That's one thing, but then when you downplay the voices of the victims that have been preyed upon by this person for years, that's not okay. And Jesus is not okay with that.
No. Jesus is all about vulnerability and humbleness.
Right.
Let you come forward in humbleness and ask for forgiveness. And yeah, there's that humility factor. And when you come to the public eye or politics, sometimes people have PR. They have agents
Right.
who go, hey, we better downplay this
Gonna
because you
spin
won't
the
get
story.
reelected. Or,
Right.
And then there's no truth left. And truth becomes meshed with lies, and then you don't know what's true anymore.
Right.
And there goes the institution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do if you are one of these people who are spiritually curious? You want to get to know more, and we're going to, of course, speak to you from a Christian biblical perspective about feeding your spiritual curiosity through the teachings of Jesus and biblical truths, and what it means to be trustworthy of this man that you and I, Kel, have put our whole lives into following, and the things that the Bible says about trust and the things that Jesus himself says about trust. So if you are spiritually curious, this is a good episode for you, as far as because we're going to speak. We're going to again speak from the Christian perspective, because that is where we come from and what we believe in. So if you are spiritually curious, we hope that you are open to some of these words that we're going to share with you.
Yeah, and I would say too, I just recently read someone, a psychologist, because I got a little bit of that going on, who said, what did he say? Curiosity is a love language in relationships.
For sure. Yeah, that
it's
makes
kind
sense.
of like,
Right.
we like the young couple that's young and in love, and they go to the restaurant and they can't stop talking, and then you look over across the room and there's a couple that's barely said a word, even
Right.
with no cell phones in hand.
Right.
And they clearly have been married a really long time. And the assumption is, oh, their relationship must be really bad. They have nothing left to say to each other, but perhaps they've learned to sit in the presence of each other.
Right.
But there is something to say about, if you want a good relationship, whatever relationship that is, stay curious.
Right.
And it's like like being intentional.
Right.
That you kind of keep that flame going, whether it's between parents, siblings, friends, spouses, significant others. Stay curious.
Yes. And how do you stay curious, Kelly? You just ask questions, right? You just
Yeah,
want to
exactly.
ask questions.
Yeah.
And even if it's as simple as, how was your day?
Right.
It's really great when, how good it makes you feel when someone asks you, tell me about your day.
Yeah.
Tell me what you've done. Tell me what you're thinking. So it's the same thing with your spirituality, and ask Jesus questions. Get to know him.
Right. And it's funny because curiosity in youth ministry, I had something called the deck of sharing, and over the years, high schoolers wrote in their high school, and it got to be, sometimes it was outright hilarious.
Right.
I'm curious, would you rather wear boxers or briefs?
Right,
Or
right.
Would you describe your love life as an almond joy
Or a mounds.
or mounds? Or
Almond joy's got nuts. Mounds don't.
I mean, and then there was also, though, like more serious topics, like if Jesus were in front of you today,
Right.
what would you ask?
Right.
Or what would he say to you? And so, yeah. And so what's interesting is I went through my old Strong's Bible Concordance.
Oh, I did the same thing. That's funny.
Did you really?
I did.
I got it off my shelf. It's like 5 pounds. The older I get,
Right.
the heavier it is. And I tried to find where Jesus said the word curious.
Oh, okay. I
And
looked up the word truth.
Oh, did you really?
See, and I think that's way easier going to the concordance than trying to Google stuff sometimes.
And it turns out Jesus never actually said point blank the word curious.
Okay.
But what he did say, it was pretty interesting. So he would say, he'd speak a lot to like the attitude behind curiosity. So
Okay.
he would like say, keep seeking, keep asking, keep wondering, keep searching. A lot of his words were active.
Right.
And so it wasn't like, oh, hey, Kate, I'm curious about motorcycle riding, but that's where it ends. I don't look into a course. I don't look at what it would mean.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'm really curious about that. Oh, and then I just let it die.
Right.
So Jesus was really active, like put your curiosity into
Yes.
motion.
Well, and when people were curious about Jesus, what did he say to them?
Yeah. Follow me, come and see. Yeah, I mean, just name it.
Yes. So he said, come and immerse yourself. If you want to know more about me, be with me, follow me. Let's do life together. Yeah. And he's still asking each and every one of us that same thing every single day, because he wants to be a part of our everyday lives. He wants to be a part of your everyday life. So bring him along, and then let him also take you along with him wherever he's going, because he said, come and see.
Yeah. I
Come
love
and see
that.
what I'm up to.
It's always an invitation, so when I was growing up as a teenager, I was the youth group kid, and, and someone in my life, and he shall remain nameless, but he would call me up. No, He would call me a Bible toter. And never once did I carry my Bible
Oh, that's funny.
into school,
Right,
but he
right.
called me the Bible toter,
Right.
did the little square box in the air.
Yeah.
You're a Bible toter, blah, 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 blah. And what's interesting to me is that there may be an assumption by those who, maybe haven't been in a church setting or don't know that many people who actually live being a Christian,
Right.
that they are put upon like as Bible toters, or boy, if I bring that up, like, hey, we're going out to dinner with Kellie and her husband, so please don't bring up any Christian topics.
Okay.
Or, I don't know. You know how that it is? Like you go out with like the Christian friend, and if you're not ready to receive it, you're like, hey, don't bring up politics, don't bring up,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But here's what.
Kind of like when someone swears in your presence. Do you get this all the time? They
I'm
swear in your
sorry, I'm
presence.
sorry.
Like, I'm so sorry. It's like, it's really okay. And for a while they used to say it's all good. I was a bartender for a really long time, so it's
I work with the cops. I'm good.
exactly.
So here's what I do like. I like that. So what I'm hearing from all your research is that people are out there, and all of us have this desire to find a deeper meaning in life, like beyond the surface, right?
Yeah.
So we want real peace, like inner peace. And then we want to experience it. We don't just want to like read about it in a book or see it in somebody else.
Right.
We want to feel that sense of peace, or we want to feel inspired.
Yes, exactly.
And there it goes, to Jesus. And here's what's great about Jesus. He never made people feel bad if they came with their doubts, he encouraged
Right.
questions,
Right.
doubts, because most likely way more people in the room or in the crowd had the question, and someone was just brave enough to ask it.
Right.
I love that about him. There's not a judgment with being curious about what he's about.
Right. Right. And of course, he's the most trustworthy human being that has ever walked the face of the earth. We sometimes refer to Jesus simply as the truth. That's like everything about his being embodied all truth. So when you're grappling with your trust of people and institutions again, while you're also being spiritually curious, the most trustworthy name, entity, thing ever is Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's no getting around that. Mm-hmm. Everything he said was trustworthy and the truth and honest and authentic and all these other things. Mm-hmm. So if you're grappling with your spirituality and again grappling with who or what you can trust, you can trust the words from Jesus, specifically the words from Jesus, not someone else's interpretation, which hopefully if someone's interpreting his words, that they are someone that you can trust and that they are a trustworthy source. But go right to the source. Go right to Scripture. See, what did Jesus say? What did he do? And it's all trustworthy and true.
I like the image of Jesus telling the fishermen disciples to cast their nets out to deeper water.
Yeah, and
And
no, thank you. They did not want to.
Yeah,
Nope.
no.
Nope.
And I just thought that's such an interesting. It wasn't like, oh hey, try another way, or hey, let's come back out in the water later. He was like, go deeper.
Right.
And I mean, I think.
But they
that's,
grumbled about it at first.
did.
They didn't want to do it, but they're
Right,
like, okay,
right.
well, if you say so.
Right. And and I think that's how it is in relationships. If you don't go deeper, if you don't take the time, the relationship fails. And I think it's the same thing with Jesus. Like,
Right.
hey, Peter, okay, you jumped in the water, you walked on water, and then you sank. But we watched Peter go deeper, get more deeply committed
Yes.
to Jesus, and it changes everything about him.
Yeah.
His joy, his happiness, his sense of purpose, what he's called to do, because he went out in deeper water.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's so interesting. Jesus is never going to get tired of you asking questions or going, wait, what? I mean, oh my gosh.
He may still respond that way, but he still welcomes, Yes. And that's, again, going back to, like, we'd already kind of touched on this with all relationships, with being curious. There's more than just being curious, but then there's also going deeper in a relationship. And that requires trust, right? So how many people in your world do you really trust with your deep concerns, your dark thoughts, your misgivings, your doubts, all that kind of stuff? Like, I would imagine most people, unless you're an incredibly trustworthy person, you got a ton of people, but I would imagine most people just can count on one hand those people that they would trust with that information. You can trust Jesus with that information. And I know, well, he's not sitting across from you and whatever, but he is sitting across from you. If you have faith to believe that he is there, but you can say anything to him that doesn't surprise him, doesn't scare him, doesn't make him think any less of you, but you can trust him with everything.
You can even say, I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't know. I'm
Yes.
still in the seeking phase.
Sure.
Trust is a big deal. So I was in my first 6 months of ministry, and I graduated from seminary just shy of 26 because, man, there's a lot of school. And there was a former associate pastor. I was associate pastor, a former associate pastor, and he came to visit the church, and I got a chance to meet him, and it was a communion Sunday. And of course, really wise person. And he said, you know what communion reminds me of? Communion in Jesus. And of course, I'm like, no, what?
Beer? That's my answer.
That's right.
Communion
Tell them what you say. Go ahead.
Beer is communion in a glass.
Now people are going to be quoting that all over.
Bread and your alcohol. There you go. Sorry.
And my story is a little nicer than that, but
That's
it's
not
so
a
true.
bad thing. Only if you're 21 and up. 21 and up and only.
Former bartender.
And in moderation.
Bartender Kate and
That's
other
right.
life.
Well,
So this is what he tells young 6 months into the ministry in a church that was just suffering at the time. And he shows up, and he'd been there many years before, and he said, every time I picture communion, I picture this, and I don't remember the man's name, but it was the first man that tightrope walked over Niagara Falls.
oh,
And
okay.
people said, there's no way you're going to do it, the
Right.
spray, everything. And,
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to do it.
Was he also the dude that walked between the Twin Towers as they were being
Oh,
built?
yeah, I don't know.
Was that the same guy?
I
or
don't
was
know.
it
That is interesting. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. We got to research that.
No, thank you. Yeah.
So here's the story. So the story is nobody believes he can do it. So obviously they promote the heck out of this day. There's a big crowd, and he yells out to the crowd from above, do you believe
Yeah.
I can do it?
Yeah.
And half the crowd's like, yes. Half the crowd's like, no. Well, he begins. It takes him a long time. I mean, people are like fireworks, right? And he gets all the way to the other side. And whoever was on the other side was his biggest doubter.
Ah.
So when he lands there, the story goes, as someone who was nearby, this doubter said, oh my gosh, you proved me wrong. You could walk across the falls.
Yep.
And he said, yes, now do you trust my word? And he said, yes, I do. And he goes, great, get on my back. We're going to go across.
Oh.
And I thought, I was not expecting that story. And this pastor goes, and there's Jesus. Trust me.
Get on my back.
Get on my back. I got you. And I thought, wow. Of course, the guy didn't do it.
Right.
He said he trusted him, but
Right,
not
right,
enough to
right.
get on the guy's back.
So there's levels of trust.
Yeah. So I just thought that was, so now I
Yeah.
picture Jesus walking across Niagara on a tightrope. Except I'd be like, cool, let
You
me
on your
jump
back.
on.
Right.
We're not falling. So
Right.
it's good.
But and that highlights, if it was Jesus, you and I wouldn't think twice.
Right.
Of course,
Right.
because he has earned our trust in every facet possible. So that's a no-brainer. But to trust another human being,
Yeah.
but I don't know, maybe if you knew this tightrope walker with the same intimate details that we know Jesus, maybe we would.
Right.
But it does kind of highlight where you go with your trust with different people.
I would say, too, you had an interesting stat down here about who is trusted.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And it was small businesses, military, police officers, and school principals. And what stands out to me about that group is it's all personal. Like so I have a great pharmacy in town I love. I know the pharmacist, I know the staff by name.
Right.
So I have a relationship with that pharmacy, and I would say
And it's
the
a small
same.
business pharmacy. It's not like
Yes.
Walgreens or
No,
CVS
no,
or
little
that's-
like mom and pop shop.
Right.
And so I would say those have to do with relationships.
Right.
And I was mentioning to Kate when we were talking about this topic before we recorded it. I love it when people have been visiting the church for a little while, whether online or in person, and they're not quite ready. Maybe they're hearing about the new members class and they're like, hey, can we come in and talk to you? And they ask really good questions. Okay, on your bulletin, here's your statement of inclusivity. Do you really mean it?
Right.
Or the vision of the church you say is this. How are you going to see that 5 years from now?
Right.
And I really like that. I think it's important if you're going to put yourself in front of somebody, whether that's the principal to, a teacher, a doctor, take the time to get to know them. And I think that's especially true in the spiritual side of things. If
Sure.
you're going to follow somebody's teachings, you should get to know them.
Yes.
I think that's important.
Yeah, so please get to know us through this podcast, friends. Like and subscribe and follow and give us good ratings.
They'll be like,
all
isn't
that
Kate
good
the one
stuff."
that ran that lady into a pole?
That is me. That is me whose voice is speaking at this moment. Yes. Yes. Yeah, and of course, we both know, Kellie, that we have to earn people's trust as well. That's a big thing. And it's fine. Like I have no problem with that. I have no problem with, hopefully walking the walk and, and understanding that, yeah, we are under a little bit of a more of a microscope, and that I don't want to say something like I need to be honest in my words. I need to make sure that people know if I'm quoting somebody, it's like, this is a really great thought and it's not mine. This belongs to someone else. And I think the more that you do little things like that, that people get to trust you more. Recently, we actually had so we just celebrated Easter at the time of this recording, and I found this really awesome illustration from a guy named Chuck Colson that he quoted why he believed in the resurrection and how Watergate taught him about why he believes in the resurrection hands down. Well, it got my words got repurposed on social media. Chuck Colson's words got repurposed on social media with my name attached to it. And I was like, no, that wasn't my thought. Like that was, and I immediately responded to the post. I said, as quoted by Chuck Colson. I wish I knew that. I wish I had that brilliant thought. Like I wish that I, had enough, I don't know, insight into something where I could, I don't know that much about Watergate, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and I think in those times when we're being transparent and we're being honest, when we're being honest about our failures or our mistakes, or making sure that like I opened up this podcast saying, oh, we got this idea by listening to another podcast and we just want to put our own spin on it, but we're not saying, hey, this is our grand idea and all this stuff. We're relying on standing on the shoulders of other people. Kind of like I use this illustration when I teach in a doctoral program, Doctor of Ministry program here locally, and I teach the students that are brand new to their 3-year program, and I talk to them about how their dissertations are like jazz. So if you know anything about jazz, you get all these instrumentalists together and they start jamming and they're all doing their thing and all their music is coming together and it's meshing, but no one person. They're coming together to create this whole piece, but then one of the instrumentalists will get inspired by what's being played and go their own way. So suddenly you'll start to hear like the trumpeter doing their own lines, or then suddenly you've got a drum solo, but it's still intermeshed with the other voices. So that's kind of like what a dissertation is, or what we do in this podcast, or what we do with the sermon, is that we're hearing all these other voices, but then we're going to take those voices and give our opinion or go our own way with that. But being honest about that, we have to be honest. Like, some of our thoughts, they're not our own thoughts. And that's the way that you can hopefully find trust in us of what we're saying. We're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes,
Right.
but we are a part of this great jazz ensemble that we learn from one another, and we get inspired from one another, and do have opportunities to put our own voice into that. But I am never going to say, oh, here's this great idea, and it's all mine, when it wasn't.
Right.
And I think that's also an issue with the world, with people like trying to pawn off. They're trying to be something that they're not. They're trying to pawn off ideas that don't belong to them. And pastors, of course, are part of that group that can do that sometimes. So I think those little things just show character and earn people's trust.
I think too, when we are quoting, and so there are pastors that I love to listen to online, and one of the things that stands out to me, no matter how brilliant they are, they come to the sermon and go, hey, I heard so-and-so, and they give this quote that I would have never come across, because I don't know this person that they're, and I'm like, wow, you know what? I'm going to go check out that person.
Yes.
And because they got something to teach me. So what's interesting, I feel like if pastors are quoting in their sermons as an illustration by what they're saying, it's telling the congregation, hey, I'm growing too. Like, I had to go outside myself,
Right.
what I know, and go out and have, biblical based understandings. And someone said this line about the scripture passage I never even thought about before, and I'm never going to look at that passage the same again. And I got to tell you about it. Like, it's like it blew me out of the water. And what that means is everybody grows.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used another line in my Easter sermon that said, if it wasn't for Easter, we never would have dreamed of celebrating Christmas. And that was not me. And I said, this was said by N.T. Wright.
Right.
And a couple people have come to me in the week since, like, oh, I loved how you said. It's like, I quoted N.T. Wright.
Yeah.
It was unfortunately not my original thought, but yeah, it's an awesome thought. So I do think in that process of when we are being honest and transparent and authentic and truthful in little things like that, where we attribute, even if it's something as small as attributing a quote to someone else, hopefully you're going to build trust in us, so that when we say, put your trust in Jesus, trust in God with all your heart and lean not in your own understanding, like from Proverbs, then hopefully maybe you'll believe us. But we still have to build that trust and that relationship, so that we can share with you the good news of Jesus and his message, and that it is trustworthy and truthful, and that you can live by these principles. But you also people have to trust us first, Kellie, before we can get to that point.
Yeah, trust is it's hard, right? So,
Well, I know I'm not a very trusting person.
no,
Like I'm trusting, but not. And I don't know how else to explain it, because I'm not a very open person. Like, I'm not going to talk a lot about myself to very many people at all. And, but I trust people. I think I'm one of those that I will trust you until I have reason to not. But I'm also not going to just blindly trust anybody.
like with your story.
With my story. Correct.
Yeah. And I think I'm the opposite.
Yes, you are.
I give people trust until I have reason to mistrust
Well, that's
them.
what I just said.
Right.
But as far as
But I jump in. I'm like, hey, you're a brand new person in my life.
Right.
You know, depending on what I may not feel that way at a squad car.
no,
When someone's getting
Why not?
arrested, probably not jumping in to trust that person, whom I will never most likely see again. But you know, in context, yeah. So, but it's not. I don't know. I used to think it was blind trust, but I think the older you get, the more you experience different versions of trust.
Right.
And how deep you go with your trust.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know, like I can have plenty of acquaintances and I can trust them with a story from my life, but I'm not going to go cry on the shoulder of all those acquaintances. I'm going to select who I trust to be my most vulnerable with.
Right.
And I think what is one of the amazing things about Jesus, like you said, his name is trust. You know, the way he inspires us to trust is when I'm exhausted, when I'm tired, when I'm feeling a little fried, that scripture passage, come to me, all who are weary and I will give you rest. Like that's powerful. Like that's an experience. So
Right.
for those who seek those like inner experiences, Jesus offers a lot of that.
Yes, exactly. I also kind of thinking about the idea of trust in general, and just thinking about as little children that we are just we do blindly trust because we don't know any better. We trust the adult figure in our life, whoever that is, that will be hopefully fed and protected and clothed, and we'll just follow them through the mall. Through a crowd,
Right.
We'll just continue to follow this person that we know and trust. But as we age and as our brains form and whatever, we tend to become less trustworthy. And I'm assuming it is because things have failed us. Things and people have failed us. You know, maybe one day you went and sat on a chair. And it broke beneath you, and maybe
Right.
and you got hurt badly from that. So maybe from there on out, you mistrust every chair you're gonna sit
Right.
in. But the idea of trust and where we come about it as human beings and how it evolves over our lifetime is really interesting. And Jesus addressed that having faith of a little child, right? And I think it's just trust as a little child, just trust that Jesus will take care of you and watch over you and protect you. You know, have that faith of a little kid and have that curiosity as a little kid,
Yeah.
like you had brought up earlier, being curious.
I think too, sometimes when we're afraid to trust Jesus, we see somebody else who's going through something and we see how they trust Jesus and we watch them and they're so different from us.
That's
like,
inspiring.
You know, it's like, wow, they're still happy. They still have a purpose and this is going on and, you know, they're still trusting.
Yes. So I guess we should probably think about wrapping up a little bit here, but some of the, I guess, what would be a good takeaway that we have for people, for those of you who are spiritually curious, especially in the realm of being a Jesus follower and kind of wanting to know more about Jesus, find someone or something, a resource, whatever that means, whether it's an influencer on social media, maybe it's us, maybe it's someone else in your world that has a good relationship with Jesus, and be curious with them. Just ask them questions, but find that source and be open to allowing trust in that person. Talk to someone and say, "Hey, I want to get to know. I want to understand this better." Find someone in. I think I just said that. So help me out here.
Well, I would say too, if you know someone that worships in another way or follows a different spiritual discipline, I think we learn a lot just by listening to each other.
Right.
You can still be curious, and it's okay. I mean, you can be following Jesus and still be curious about your friend who's a Buddhist. I mean, we should be
Right.
listening and learning from each other.
Yes.
definitely. It'll make us deeper, perhaps,
Yes.
in our faith.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I have a blessing, or did you have an action? Were you going to give them?
I was well, I just wanted to kind of, I don't know if reiterate, but probably reiterate from stuff we said from other podcasts, that there is something to be said about trusting in the creator of the universe. And of course, you've got to get to that place first where you believe that there is a creator of the universe, but the creator of the universe that we know and believe in and trust is the God of the Bible, and is the God who walked the earth in the form of Jesus. And it is an ancient religion. It's an ancient practice, but there is a reason why it has been sustained for thousands of years. It is a thought, and it's an understanding, and it's a belief system. It's a moralistic system, because really the first place in recorded history where we learn anything about morals is the Ten Commandments. There's nothing else in recorded literature as ancient as the Ten Commandments, and that is where we get our understanding of being moral human beings. So just keep in mind that this isn't a Johnny-come-lately random new age thing. This is something that's been around for a long time and still remains relevant and still remains highly influential in this world, in spite of those people and ourselves included that have not always been a great representative of Jesus and his teachings. So I think that gives credibility as to that you can trust at the heart of who God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity is. You can trust every aspect of that.
And trust grows. So
Exactly.
your trust builds, as your relationship builds.
Yeah.
I found this great blessing, and the title is great. It's "Blessed are the curious, for they shall have adventures."
I love adventure. My favorite thing. This will be good.
And here's a great name, by Lovell Brockman.
Huh.
I love that.
Okay.
Love is the first four letters.
Oh, there
in
you
her
go.
First name.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
You sure
All right.
Lovell is a girl?
Who knows?
Okay.
Who knows? I love it.
Either way, it starts with love.
All right, here we go. Here is your blessing. Please receive it. Blessed are those who doubt, search, and seek the truth. Blessed are those who ask hard questions with no easy answers. Blessed are those who wrestle with the paradoxes of faith. Blessed are those who welcome nuances of life. Blessed are those who admit they don't have all the answers. Blessed are those who are willing to learn something new. Blessed are those with childlike imaginations. Blessed are the dreamers. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who welcome new adventures despite risks. Blessed are the curious. And now may the love of God and the love of Christ and the love of the Holy Spirit continue to make you curious today and all days. Have a wonderful day.
Amen. Love that. Thank you. That was a perfect blessing. And may you trust Jesus enough to hop on his back and tightrope across Niagara Falls with him. So yes, friends, thank you for joining us. We really do value your time and are grateful that you spent this hour with us. So if you are willing to subscribe to our various media channels, we'd be really grateful. And if you're also willing to give us some feedback, whatever that may be truthful. That's all we're looking for, but we would love that. We do sincerely appreciate your support. So may you have a blessed day. Bye.